Hey, Lugia, you ready to start the podcast?
You talking to me? You talking to me? There's only one other guy here. You talking to me? All right, well, let's get right into it. Welcome back to another episode of It's Always Sunny in Hollywood. I am one of your hosts, Lugia, and you are talking to.
I'm Red, and
And
that's
I am
both of them.
Patrick,
Yeah.
and I don't think he was talking to me.
Now we're
Yes,
talking to each other.
we're all talking to each other.
Oh, we're
Oh,
talking.
okay.
That's what I'm
Anyway,
talking about.
um,
Do we have any news?
I got nothing.
Actually, I think I got something before we start talking about the movie. So, are you all familiar with the popular "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared" videos?
I've
Yes,
heard of it. I've
the TV
never
show
watched it.
debuted, right? That's what I
Uh,
heard.
Something of the sort. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
I
making
know.
new
Like
episodes.
a few years back, they got picked up by a TV network, and I think they finally finished whatever their project was. So now we're getting, I guess, "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared" on the television.
On the
Let's hope
telly.
no. Yes, no.
Oh wait, no, that's the telephone. Oops.
No, the telly is what they call the TV. I'm pretty sure.
Did it? Oh, I am
Essentially, we can
uneducated.
call this a second season.
I've
Yeah,
been to England once in my life, and it was only for a day.
I lived in England for like a month, a
I've
few
never
years
even
back.
been to England.
But anyway,
But yeah, I'm interested to watch those episodes because Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is like one of those series that fascinates me from a
yeah,
creative standpoint.
yeah,
Like the
internet
set
classic.
design, the characters, and how they interact with their environments. That all look really cool to me.
Yeah,
Obviously, the content itself is questionable, but I genuinely like what I saw with the first series of videos. So I'm interested to see where this quote unquote second season takes it.
I actually do have something to say. I completely forgot. But I saw two modern movies yesterday. In fact, one is Rob Zombie's The Munsters, his remake that was able to see that. Um, I'm gonna say I liked it. It's getting some negative press right now. Well, mixed. It's getting mixed reviews, but I thought it was once Herman Munster gets introduced, I think it's great. It's like really, it's kind of the goofy, campy stuff you'd expect from a 60s show. I'm gonna be honest, the way they shot it, like it basically just feels like you're watching the original show, but in color. It's got a very TV vibe to it. I basically say this movie just feels like a big ass pilot, and I would honestly be open to Rob Zombie making a Monsters TV show reboot. And I guess I was in the still in the horror mood because then I saw Bodies, 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 which is this murder mystery slasher parody that came out this year. Thought it was pretty funny. It was kind of trying to lampoon the millennial, I mean the Zoomer a little bit because it was doing the cabin, all those cabin in the wood horror movies have like dumb teenagers, so this one was trying to tap into the modern dumb teenagers. It was pretty good. I don't like personally relate to any of the characters or anything, but it felt like it caught the general vibe of our generation, and good twist at the end. And
Yeah, I thought the twist was actually pretty clever.
oh, you saw the movie too?
I did see the movie. I didn't talk about it though because I didn't have much to say about it.
Yeah.
But I did like the twist.
Yeah, I thought the acting was pretty good. The twist was, pretty funny. It reminded me of another horror movie, but with that movie they kind of just like revealed their hand like immediately, and it was just like a full comedy. When this was basically just like a horror movie, and then like the ending just kind of like pulled the rug under you. So yeah, I'd recommend it. I'd give Monsters like a 6.5, and this one like a 7. And a bunch of other movies came out this week, but I didn't get the chance to see them. Like Don't Worry, Darling, which has been pretty controversial because there's apparently been like a lot of beef. And I know Avatar re-released, and a lot of people are seeing that. Like apparently, it's actually made like a lot of money. Avatar's re-release, so I think it's safe to assume that people are gonna watch the sequel.
All right, shall
Is
we
that
get
is
to
that
the
popular too?
get in the cab?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. So, our topic for today is Taxi Driver, directed by Martin Scorsese, which I believe last time we talked about one of his movies was The Departed, like a year
That was
ago.
episode 2 of the show.
Literally episode 2, yeah. And we're on episode 72?
Hey, it took 70 episodes to get back.
Yes. It's going to be interesting talking because, as you may remember, I was not a fan of The Departed. It was, in my opinion, Martin Scorsese's worst film. And I think Taxi Driver is one of his best, if not his best. So, big jump. But yeah, why don't you get into the I guess background?
Okay,
plot
so
detail.
this movie was released on February 9th, 1976. It had a budget of $1.9 million and made just about $28.6 million. So this was pretty successful for the time. This movie was born when... Not born. Why did I write that? Holy shit, that sounds so weird. All right.
But you've never seen anybody birth a movie before? You never saw in health class the video of somebody birthing a movie?
No, this movie
I saw the kangaroo video we had to watch in middle school.
Kangaroo? I don't remember a kangaroo video. What?
Nor do I.
Was it only me?
I guess so. I saw
You just saw like a woman give birth. What?
Yeah, like
I
a
just saw like a
human woman.
normal human being.
Okay, I don't know who you had for your health teacher during middle school, but I saw a kangaroo get birthed.
Okay.
How did we get here? All right.
No idea, but
let me know if you want
in,
this cut
please.
out.
No, keep it. Keep it.
All right.
So, anyway, so yeah, this movie was written by Paul Schrader. Everyone talks about the director, but Paul Schrader is actually a very significant screenwriter in his own right, writing several of Scorsese's own movies and being a prolific director of his own. Some of you may have heard of First Reform that came out a few years back. That was huge. Or Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters. American Gigolo, Card Counter. Like the writer is just as successful as a director as the actual director.
Actually, I want to get into Paul Schrader for a little bit because his experience living in New York City was a major inspiration for this film because he was battling against chronic insomnia and he frequently visited a lot of pornographic bookstores and theaters since they were open all night. They wanted this movie to have a feeling that the viewer is in limbo. Scorsese also used The Wrong Man and A Bigger Splash as inspirations. I've never seen those two films.
Neither have I.
Yeah, but they're old.
Yeah, I do find two things I found interesting about Taxi Driver is that one, most people like to joke like, oh, he's just like me for real and stuff. In this movie, the creators actually like agree. They thought that the movie was incredibly relatable, and this is unlike like Drive or like those other movies where people are like, oh, it's meant to be a criticism. They're like this guy's fucked up, but like also we feel it, you know. But what I found interesting is, have you guys heard about the story of this movie's final cut? It's kind of a Hollywood legend.
I have not. No.
In what way?
Well, basically, the studio thought the ending was way too violent, and they wanted to cut it, tone it down, and stuff. And Scorsese wasn't having it. So his plan was that he was going to take a loaded gun and threaten the producer.
Wait, what?
What?
Yeah, and I believe like Spielberg or De Palma, they were like there, his like at home that day, and they like talked him. They kind of like talked him down. But yeah, he was about to go full Travis Bickle himself.
Get
Scorsese.
the mohawk and everything.
Yeah, but like because he was like he thought this was gonna be like the movie of his career, that this was like his masterpiece, and he was kind of right. And he was like, I'm not letting them change it. And ultimately, though, he came up with the idea that he was just gonna change the saturation, which is why you kind of got that weird sort of grimy dark tint in the final act. And yeah, because like that blood was originally gonna be like bright red, like how like actual blood is, but that's why we got the kind of dark maroonish thing, because he color graded it so it wouldn't get it'd get an R rating and not an NC-17.
Yeah.
Huh.
That was a pretty controversial point for the time.
Controversies. So anyway, I guess one of the most famous controversies about this movie is that it inspired the assassination of Ronald Reagan.
Attempted assassination.
Attempted, yes, because it didn't.
Yes.
He didn't actually go through with
He
it.
lived.
That's a real
He
shame.
lived.
So
John Hinckley Jr.
yeah,
saw this movie and he he really liked Jodie Foster as Iris. Like, he was infatuated with her. So much so that he wanted to impress Jodie by assassinating Ronald Reagan. I don't know how the two correlate. They just do.
Yeah, he was inspired. He's since been released.
He was found not guilty by reason
released?
of insanity.
Yeah, and he's currently now a recording artist making music, and he's actually been oddly successful in his music career. So that's kind of funny. So remember, kids, you too can attempt to kill the president and then get out a few years later and become a decent musician.
Not a few years later, like 2 decades, 3 decades later.
It's gonna take some time, but you'll get there.
Also, when
he was just released back in June, so
well,
3 decades.
Technically, he was released in 2016, but he was still under like parole and like under a lot of conditions. It was until it was this June that he was just like all the restrictions got lifted, but he was out since 2016.
Regardless, he is free.
But yeah, I think his inspiration in Taxi Driver was because Jodie Foster's character was saved and likes Travis Bickle, and Travis Bickle earlier in the movie attempted to assassinate the presidential candidate. So I guess that's where Hinckley's ideas came. But anyway, let's stop talking about the.
Actually, I got one more thing to discuss about that.
Okay.
When Martin Scorsese heard about the reason why he attempted to assassinate Ronald Reagan, he almost quit filmmaking as a whole.
Scorsese?
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And like you said, he saw this movie as like his masterpiece. So having someone influenced by that to do something like that because of the fact that he was in love with this person that he probably would never meet in real life, that's gonna hurt a man.
The way I see it, like, man was literally ruled insane, and it's actually not as easy as you think to get a criminal insane verdict in the court. A lot of people are like, oh, a lot of people think because of TV and stuff, but like, no, if you get an insane thing, you're probably like genuinely insane. So I don't think Martin should get like torn up about it. I know what Charles Manson was inspired by Helter Skelter, a Beatles song, which the Beatles are the band that's known for peace and love and stuff. So even they could influence a crazy man. Then
Anyway, going back to Jodie Foster for a bit, there's one more controversy I'd like to discuss about her. When this film was shot, she was 12 years old at the time, and if you recall, she played Iris, a prostitute. Obviously, that's not going to fly with a lot of people. So, because of that, Scorsese himself didn't even know what to do for directing Jodie Foster. So he had Robert De Niro direct her instead, and she saw him as a mentor, and it actually helped her out with her acting career. So, I mean, that's a positive.
I know this movie was often compared at the time as being a sort of spiritual successor to The Searchers, which is this old Western, because they both center on lonely war veterans attempting to save a girl who doesn't want to be saved. The main character's alien from society and can't really have normal relationships. And I know Paul Schrader's. It's never been confirmed if Paul Schrader looked at the Searchers for inspiration, but it's definitely been compared to a lot.
That's all I have for the background. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, then I guess we can just get into the movie then. Taxi Driver is the story of a man named Travis Bickle who gets a job as a taxi driver, as the title would imply, and he goes around picking up and dropping off people. But it turns out there's some pretty shitty people out there, and soon enough he starts getting a little jaded from his life, so he tries to find a love interest, one named Betsy, and things go well at first until he takes her to a porno, and then she breaks up with him. So now Travis not only hates the world, but also women. Well, he also does help out a prostitute named Iris, helps her get a better life, but things turn a little violent by the end. She makes it out just fine, and Travis is renowned as a hero. I'm going to be real. the ending to this movie was a little messy.
Okay, so I thought the ending was great, but basically the idea was he wanted to make it more like it was meant to be sort of this intentionally sort of vague like dream thing where you weren't sure if because here's the thing, like Travis undeniably gets a happy ending. You know, he gets clips about his heroism and stuff, and it was meant to. They're trying to do like a couple things there, where like one, you kind of question whether this is actually happening or not. But even if it is, like this sort of idea that Travis's sort of psychosis is getting kind of rewarded because in the end he saved someone, and if he just killed all the pimps and like nothing else, he would probably just it probably just considered a crazy man that killed like a bunch of random people. But because he was saving someone, that there's meant to be sort of commentary there. But it's often like it's an often interpretation that like the ending is not meant to be interpreted literally, but rather like it completes the story on like a more emotional catharsis rather than what actually happens. Not ending on a carnage, but redemption, which is the goal of many other Scorsese characters. I know Ebert said something like along those lines during his analysis. Apparently, James Berardinelli, in his review of the film, also he argues against the dreamer fantasy interpretation, but he thought like the 5 minute sort of epilogue was steeped in irony, underscores the vagaries of fate. Here, let me just read his quote. So the media builds back Bickle into a hero. When had he been a quicker draw gun against Senator Palatine, he would have been reviled as an assassin. So basically, like the film closes with the misanthrope being embraced as a model citizen. So yeah, there's meant to be that's kind of what's going on with the ending.
Gotcha. I don't know. It still felt a little off to me.
Yeah, but like it was intentionally meant to be off. So one thing I thought was interesting was so after the attempted assassination, television edits of the film would end the movie with a black screen that has a disclaimer that the distinction between hero and villain is sometimes a matter of interpretation or misinterpretation of facts. Basically, all TV versions of the movie would sort of end with the kind of them just spelling out sort of the theme and ending, so people kind of like got the point, and that it wasn't like trying to glorify Travis Bickle, but sort of like it's complicated. What did you think about it, Patrick?
So, for a little It's Always Sunny in Hollywood lore, for those of you who don't remember, I was not here when we discussed The Departed, first Martin Scorsese movie. And when it comes to Taxi Driver, I'll be real, before this, the only other Martin Scorsese movie I've seen was the first 30 minutes of Hugo. I never finished Hugo for some reason. That is my only experience with a Martin Scorsese directed film. And for Taxi Driver, as a first full impression of Martin Scorsese, I thought it was pretty damn good.
Yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah, it's got like a very unique vibe to it, with like the way like the sort of jazz and the sort of.
Oh yeah, don't get me started on the jazz. The music in this movie is phenomenal.
Yeah,
so damn good.
Scorsese actually really fought for the soundtrack because he wanted Bernard Herrmann to score, and this was basically his final score before he died. And Scorsese was like, he was like, this man's my first and only choice. Scorsese himself said that he thinks the score was like a huge factor in this movie's success because it's kind of gives this sort of a it kind of like scores a sort of psychological kind of like vibe going throughout, because throughout you got this it's very melancholic. You can like really like through the music you understand like sort of Travis's kind of like dull life, how it's like you're just kind of like going through the motions and the stuff.
I'll say Herman definitely went out with a bang. This is great stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought the movie looked very good. Like, I mean, it's not a very clean looking movie, but I mean,
no, it's pretty grimy.
I mean, like, it looks like it gets down the 70s pretty well from what I've seen.
Yeah,
at least like the darker side of the 70s.
Yeah, kind of like that sort of like
very red movie
that it had. I remember a lot of like greens and like a lot of shadows in there.
Some
Yeah,
yellows, aside from the taxi, anyway.
I mean, it's
yeah.
very easy to see that Joker definitely took heavy inspiration from this.
Yes, right.
Like
So
no
you
no
got to see
question.
Joker before this. So now that you've seen the movie that many people accuse Joker of kind of lifting a lot of ideas from, that and another Scorsese film, what did you think about it?
I'm gonna be honest. This movie was less violent than I was expecting it to be.
It only got really
I
violent towards the end.
no, I went into this movie thinking it would be about a taxi driver who becomes a killer. It was not that. It was a much more psychological examination of that idea, and it only really got violent towards the end. So I was a little bit taken aback by how a lot of this movie was just kind of talking about
Hmm.
violence and showing like the knives and the guns, and it wasn't until the end when things actually started to get bloody.
Yeah. Here's the thing, what I noticed. Anytime anytime critics complain about a movie being violent, it's never if it's actually violent, it's just the kind of violence. Because like even action movies back then were like way more violent than this film, but because like this movie is like so controversial with how it's like not like an ambiguous like good and bad thing, that's why the violence is controversial. Not just because like there was violence, but because of like the nature of the violence.
Well, actually, to talk about the violence for a second, that whole scene where he's going into the building to try to rescue the girl, that whole scene I would left me kind of confused because it was very oddly edited and paced because there's no music. There's a very gray, grimy filter over everything, even more so than the rest of the movie. And
Again,
he
that
gets
struck me as
shot
like
in the neck, but at one point it's not there, but then it is. But
I was
yeah,
thinking he would just
some
die
of the
then and
violence
there,
is in
but then he turns
some of
out to
the
be
violence is
fine.
in slow motion. I was like, what the hell?
yeah. So that's another reason why people kind of think the it's kind of dreamlike because he gets shot and then like the wound goes away with these weird hazy filters, and then at the end, not only is he fine, he's hailed as a hero and stuff. So people are like, okay, maybe that's another reason why a lot of people think the ending is this weird sort of a dream where you're just kind of you're seeing like where Travis died and like he's just imagining the ending. But yeah, the filter was again just like a censorship issue. But I thought like the ending was kind of funny because you like Travis isn't like a really like particularly like competent killer. He's just like this reckless dude that just went in there like guns blazing, and then obviously everything just kind of ended up like very messy. It's not like a thrilling action scene. It's just like a really just like messy kind of bloody encounter. I don't know if you guys have seen Mean Streets, which is an earlier Scorsese film, but there's a fight scene in that movie, and it's like one of the most realistic fight scenes I've seen, where it's not like a thrilling action thing. It's just like a bunch of like people like just kind of like messily wailing at each other like in a bar. And I was like, yeah,
Amidst this whole discussion, sorry to interrupt, but amidst this whole discussion, we've neglected to talk about the big thing in the movie, Robert De Niro.
That's right.
yeah. So obviously his performance is great. You can a lot of
Hmm.
Travis feels like a very like just a human character. Like
The literally me character. I don't know if he's the first of his kind, but I think he was
uh
the first to make an
he's,
impact.
he's not the first of his kind. There's this movie called The Driver, which was basically like that was like the genesis of this character type. It came out actually no, never mind. The Driver came out after this. So yep, this was the first one.
Another Driver movie.
Never ends.
The Driver got
No,
was inspiration for like a lot of movies. Like if you watch The Drive, you're like, oh, this is like Drive or this is like Baby Driver. It kind of like just kicked off this trope. Where like, yeah, let's do movies about.
I'm
There's a
going
reason,
for a drive, you know.
every literal me character is like a guy that like drives a cab for a reason or drives some sort of vehicle for like a reason. It's because like Taxi Driver and The Driver just gonna set this precedent, and that's just how people like to explore it.
All
Every
right, so I
director can
guess
take the same generic story, some getaway criminal driver thing. Yeah.
yes, set your expectations right when you go to see a movie with drive in the title.
Yes. I'm about to see some sicko shit.
Hmm. Some pretty cool sicko shit.
Fast and Furious presents Drive the Driver, and I'd be like, oh fuck, Vin Diesel's about to go off his shits. One thing I found interesting about this compared to other literally me characters is that I'd say this is the only one where like he feels like an actual human being, Because like with Joker, or like Ryan Gosling's character in Drive, or like some of Scorsese's later movies, like King of Comedy, is like they seem like a lot more like mentally disturbed. When this guy, he just seems like a lonely dude who's being kind of like neglected by like the system because it was like PTSD. He's able to like talk to like a girl and like actually go out on a date with him, but like it's only like once he's on the date that he starts like fucking up and being like a weirdo. I found it just interesting because like it's like this guy was like the most it's like most capable of being normal of like all the Literally Me movies I've seen, where like you could see if he just got like a little bit of help or like a little bit of like support, he probably would have just like turned out fine. But system just kind of screwed him over. So this is like it's kind of like where I think like Joker like failed a bit, because like Joker he's kind of like just crazy from the start, but like with Taxi Driver you're like, if in Taxi Driver like I saw like Travis like his like social worker psychiatrist like just abandoned him, then I'd be like, okay, now I can. It'd be a lot more believable why like
You see his descent into.
Yeah, like it's an actual descent. It's not like this guy was just like this from the start, and he just hit a breaking point. Like no, this is an actual decline.
Also, I want to go back to comparing Travis's character to like other Literally Me characters, because I was thinking of American Psycho when I saw this movie, and how it's pretty much the complete opposite. Because in here you have a working class man who by the end starts to get noticed and renowned as this hero, whereas in American Psycho it's this rich Sigma male whose murders are just swept under the rug and he's basically non-existent to society.
Yeah, like people don't even like recognize him for the person he is in American Psycho, because it's just like he's like, oh, Paul. It's like, I'm not Paul Allen. Who are? He's like, oh, like people just confuse him for this because all their jobs are interchangeable.
Actually, if we're still talking about comparing it to other movies, there's one point. Remember that one scene in Fight Club where I think the guy gets like acidic salt poured on his hand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a scene in this movie where Travis is holding his fist over an open flame on an oven.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminded me of that, and it got me thinking. So, does every decade have that one movie that's kind of like stand up against the scum of society?
Yeah, but it's also like the people who are standing up are also like a little bit like mentally deranged.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean, a 70s Taxi Driver, Fight Club was 90s, Joker was 2000s. What was that movie for the 80s and the 2000s?
I mean, for the 80s, I guess it would be
Well, Joker was the 2010s. American Psycho, I'd say, is the 2000s.
Oh yeah, you're right. Document right.
Yeah, but for 80s, I don't know, maybe King of Comedy. I forgot when the King of Comedy come out. Yeah, King of Comedy came out 82, so I guess.
All right, so we've talked about 3 of the 5 so far.
Yes,
The Scum of Society quadrilogy.
Yeah, actually,
quadrilogy. You mean
I got a list.
Because 5, not 4.
It's pentology. My bad. It's pentology.
Yeah, that too.
Wait. Let me look.
Scum of Society pentology.
Release date.
I mean, we made it. We already made it through one unofficial series of movies. Might as well
that is true.
We are so unconventional.
Actually, if we're going 80s, I mean, there's kind of like Full Metal Jacket. Sergeant Pyle. He kind of goes through that, and that was 87. And then a Manhunter, which was yeah, I don't know, maybe Scarface. That's kind of the Sigma male movie of the 80s, or national. Here's what I'm going to say. Don't know what I'm going to say the Sigma male movie of the 80s is?
What?
National Lampoon's Vacation. Think about it. At the end, Chevy Chase's character, fucking Clark Griswold, he just like goes insane. He pulls out a gun when he's at like Disneyland. He was like, "You're going to take my family on the fucking rides." He just completely snaps. The 80s was the Reagan, like, lighthearted, like shiny decade. So of course it's going to get the comedy version of the Sigma male.
American Psycho's the comedy version, though, I'd argue.
Yeah, but I'd say like the 2000s, because here's the thing, like Fight Club came out in 99, so like let's be real, it was kind of the 2000s ones also, like.
Yeah, but American Psycho came out like a year after.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there was no change in culture from 99 to 2000. The change in culture, the 2000s culture really started with 9/11 and the Iraq War. So
Okay, then if Fight Club is the movie of the 2000s, what's the movie of the 90s?
no, I'm saying no, I'm not saying Fight Club is a movie in the 2000s. I'm saying American Psycho isn't the movie of the 2000s.
Oh, then what is?
Well, let me see. Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko.
Haven't
I've
seen
heard the
that.
name. I've heard the name.
It's sort of the iconic cult movie. This one's about a high schooler, but the high schooler kind of goes through like his sort of Sigma male arc, and he kills like a pedophile in the movie and stuff. So yeah, I'd say Donnie Darko.
Okay.
That
And
is
it
the Sigma
and it
film of
came
the
out.
2000.
Yeah, it came
2001.
out late 2001. So yeah, okay.
And literally a plane crash was a major part of the movie. So I'm going to say it definitely captures that. And I'd say the American Psycho of the 2000s is Thank You for Smoking, because it's about a smoking lobbyist, and he's kind of like, it's got that sort of kind of corporate humor. But there's also Collateral, which the plot of Collateral is basically what you thought Taxi Driver was going to be, because it's about a taxi driver that basically picks up an assassin, and then the assassin forces him to drive him around like the entire night to take out his hits. And
Huh. That was a fun little side tangent, but otherwise, I think I've pretty much said my piece about Taxi Driver.
Same here.
Again, I'm
one,
sure there is plenty more to discuss, but just going off of a first viewing and my first Martin Scorsese movie, yeah, I've said my piece.
yeah, date scene was pretty interesting, like the whole Travis and Betsy dynamic, because that's actually at the center of the film, and I feel like we haven't talked about that much. So it was pretty good. Cast was great, obviously. We talked about Robert De Niro, but Jodie Foster, great
Actually,
job. Child acting is very difficult to pull off, so the fact that she did is very impressive to me. Albert Brooks is Tom. I think he's like underrated because like he's kind of like the comic relief of the film, and I was like, I don't know, he's great. I like Albert Brooks.
Who's the guy who did Andy, the gun salesman?
Steve Prince.
He was only in one scene, but I thought his performance was funny.
Yeah, what's interesting is Steve Prince is not like he's not like a real actor. Like he does not have like many credits. It was basically like this was like his only real role in a film.
I made the most of it.
Yeah. Harvey Keitel was pretty good as Matthew Higgins. What I found interesting about Albert Brooks is Albert Brooks, he's like a comic relief character here in the Sigma male movie of the 2010s, Drive. Albert Brooks plays he's like the villain. He's the mob boss that the in the movie. So I just thought that was kind of funny. Definitely got upgrades. Yeah, I'd say Joker's actually the Sigma male movie of the 2020s, because it came out like 2019, so it doesn't really represent 2019, but it's like
That's fair.
definitely influenced the 2000s. I'd say Drive is the Sigma male movie of the 2010s.
Fair enough.
It's like, let's be real, Drive is like that's like the one of that movie, like cultural impact is like insane. What'd you think of the Martin Scorsese cameo?
Is he the guy who was
He was-
looking
he
at
was-
his
he
wife
was-
in the window?
No, he was asshole passenger. I'm pretty sure he says the N word at some point. He's like a
Yeah,
real
the guy
Oh,
who,
that guy.
the guy who said, "That's my wife. That's not my apartment."
Yeah, him.
That's who I was referring to.
Okay, my bad. Sorry.
It's all right. It's all right.
But anyway, yeah, I just thought it was interesting, like that that cameo, and also I'm just gonna say, man, Tarantino gets so much shit because he says the N words and says the N word in his movies, and like Scorsese ain't get nothing. What the hell? Pretty great movie. 10 out of 10. I loved it.
I'll give
I
it
dressed-
a 9 out
I
of 10.
I dressed up as Travis Bickle for Halloween last year, and because I got the jacket, so I'm like, hell yeah. So obviously, I'm a big fan of the film. If I went for him as Halloween, so
I will say this is definitely a movie I'm going to come back to at some point.
yeah, this is definitely
My only complaint is the ending. It didn't really sit well with me. I don't think Travis really should have been renowned as a hero after, doing all those murders and almost assassinating what's his name? Palpatine? Not Palpatine. Palantine.
Yeah, I get that, but I also think like the ending, they kind of leave it as like maybe it's a dream sequence, and even if it's not, there's interesting commentary with how
I guess it added closure to
gets
Betsy
renowned as
and Travis's relationship. I did think that was all right. Everything else about the ending, nah.
No.
Maybe it'll grow on me.
Yeah.
I'd agree with you. There are certain parts of this movie I'm still confused at, but if I watch it again, thinking about the whole dream aspect, I think it'll be more clear.
I think yeah, okay. I think you guys might like it more.
Ironically, I think
as
thinking
I-
about it as a dream would make it more clear.
yeah. 10 out of 10. Definitely recommend you guys revisit it because I revisited a few times and I think it gets better upon rewatch. And yeah. So it's your recommendation today, right, Patrick?
That it is. All right. Guys, I notice it has been quite a while since we've talked about an animated film.
Was it?
Yeah. What was the last?
As excluding Fooly Cooley, Pokemon the first movie, which was
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah, back quite a few
I'm
months.
gonna count Fooly Cooley, but when was Fooly Cooley?
Fooly Cooley was that's a mini series. I'd argue that's a bit different.
Fooly
But okay.
Cooley was like 9 episodes ago.
Well, okay. It's been since Fooly Cooley we talked about something animated, but in terms of an animated film, it was Pokemon. I think it's time we return to the realm of animation, but I'm gonna pull out the big guns here and talk about a Pixar movie.
Okay.
Because we have not talked about the big old lamp boys yet.
Yes.
That
they are,
eye was done dirty.
Brace yourselves, gents, because we're turning red next week.
Oh shit. Okay.
we're doing Turning Red?
Yeah, we're doing
Turning
Turning
Red.
Red.
Well, we kind of already talked about it when we first saw it, but yeah, sure.
I've never
Yeah,
seen
maybe-
it.
Lugia hasn't seen it, and during that brief discussion, I said I was gonna choose it one day.
Oh, right, you did. Okay, fair enough.
All
Okay,
right.
cool.
So yes,
Good to see it again. Yeah, I've actually rewatched. I've actually seen that movie more than once.
yeah, same here. Same
Yeah.
here. I think it'd make an interesting discussion at least.
Yeah. I got some things to say.
So do I.
I'm gonna drop my patented Mitchell's versus the Machines comparison because that's what I always do when I talk about
I still need to see
things that I like but I think are kind of cringe at the same time. Oh, if you haven't seen it, then that'd be a good like.
If I can make time for it this week, then I'll give Mitchell's a watch.
Yeah. But all right, Turning Red. That will be fun.
We'll see.
Okay. All right, we'll see you next week. Say hello to my little friend. That's from Scarface, but whatever. There, then end the episode.